Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. As always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Mason. We got local sports topics to talk about. We've maybe got a national topic to talk about. I got a gambling topic to talk about that Rick maybe doesn't even know about yet, but maybe he does. Maybe he'll bring it up in the podcast. And of course, my favorite portion where you can ask a question on any subject. Go to the Twitterverse, the Xverse, hit up the hashtag AskSkinnyAnything. Again, it does not have to be sports related, but it certainly can be. And Rick, I'm back from vacation. It was a tough integration getting back yesterday to work. It just didn't. It's like that first day after, like I took some vacation days. I parlayed that into the Memorial Day holiday. Took a vacation day on the backside of that to travel back. And usually I get back from vacation. It's usually right around training camp. I took it at a different time this year, so I have to hit the ground running. This year I hit the ground like crawling. I'm not ready to go back to work.
Well, that's part of where we're at in the calendar too, right? In terms of sports in Cincinnati. I wouldn't say this is like the slowest week of the year yet in terms of our summer, but we're pretty close right now in terms of Cincinnati sports talk.
Yes,
so
it is.
Bear with us during this podcast. I think we have some good stuff to talk about either way. It looked like we're actually going to have a rare segment of positivity regarding our Cincinnati Reds this week, Skinny, as they after we podcasted last Thursday, they went and they swept the Dodgers in a 3-game series. And then they won the first game of the Cardinal series on Monday to make it a 4-game winning streak. However, they dropped Tuesday's game against the Cardinals 7-1, and then Wednesday's game 5-3 to lose the series. They have Thursday off, and then they're in Chicago for a day game on Friday at 2:20 to play the Cubbies. They're currently 24-32, last in the NL Central, 8.5 games back of the first place Brewers. Now, they did get some good news on Wednesday as TJ Friedl was activated from the injured list, started in center field, and batted leadoff. I guess my question for you is, after the 4-2 stretch since we last spoke and TJ Friedl's return, is that enough to make you feel like this team has some positive momentum, or is that sweep of the Dodgers some fool's gold?
Yeah, I think some fool's gold. I will say, listen, they're getting good starting pitching for the most part, and that at least gives you a chance. But gosh, this offense is just so sucky to watch. It really and truly is. They take bad at bats, they swing at bad pitches. Everybody's uppercutting for the upper decks, and they don't make enough contact. I mean, heck, a couple of hits they had in the Wednesday game were total bleeders. One from Luke Maley and one from Jonathan India. Again, you don't have to apologize for that. It's part of the game, and get line drives that are robbed of hits that go the other way sometimes. But I just hate their approaches at the plate. They're just awful to watch.
And that's the thing. We've talked a lot about how the injuries have put this team in a position where it's like you're watching guys who were never expected to be relied upon as everyday significant contributors give you everyday at bats. And that's the biggest problem for this team. But at the same time, like, you have to start questioning something because it seems like the whole team stinks right now from an offensive perspective. And as you're pointing out, just the quality of the at-bats, the way they're playing, it looks nothing like the team that we saw last year towards the end of the year.
No, I mean, Spencer Steer, again, is it a sophomore slump? I guess you can point to that a little bit, but he's regressed at the plate. Will Benson's regressed at the plate. Jake Fraley's regressed at the plate. And I know the illness had a little something to do with that, but that illness is now 3 or 4 weeks in the rearview mirror, and he still doesn't hit for much power, even though he's hitting cleanup. So that's a handful of guys who have regressed to the plate. And, maybe maybe it is a sophomore slump from some of these guys. Maybe Jake Fraley had an aberration of a year that is what you're going to look at down the road and go, I remember that one semi-good year he had back in 2023. But yeah, this is what Jake Fraley, he wasn't a great player when he came over, and maybe I thought they found lightning in a bottle, and I don't know if they did now. He looks like a lot of those outfielders, 4th or 5th outfielders at best. And again, that's just where I don't want to push this totally into the corner of management coaches, because that's always the easy place to put this, but something needs to change at the plate. Something.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the talent needs to be upgraded, but we talked about at the end of last year how, a lot of these guys were saying, oh, they look great, like they could be a big part of the future. But there was always that other part of it of, well, they're not proven. They've only done it for this year, and some of them just part of the year. And a lot of them didn't even have enough at-bats to really know. I mean, we were talking about like Noelvi Marte as he's this huge loss for this team this year, but he's barely proven anything at the major league level. There was always the potential for these guys to have a regression here this season. And
but all of them?
Unfortunately for the Reds right now, all of them are happening at the same time. There was always the potential that all of them could regress. The thing that I felt last year was that it's unlikely that all of them will. Hopefully just one of them or two of them. Right now, it feels like Part of it is injuries. Obviously, you don't have all of them available. But the other part of it is most of those guys have regressed. And even Ellie and Spencer Steer, who were hot to start the season, have hit a bit of a slump here recently.
Yeah, Ellie had a couple of hits yesterday, but yeah, I think he was down to 246, 247, and he's never going to hit for high average, but he had cooled off significantly from what he had been for a few weeks. And maybe that's what we're going to have to live with Ellie. It's just going to be crazy hot streaks of just stupid fun stuff to watch, and then just these long droughts at the plate. And I do wonder too, I mean, I think some of this can be contagious. Like I watched a TJ Friel at bat yesterday night. It's first game back, and so I'm not going over my skis. But he swung at a 3-2 pitch basically in the dirt, like he was trying to jerk a home run out of the ballpark to tie the score as opposed to giving a good at bat. And I think the contagious part is everybody feels like they're trying to hit a 5-run home run at the same time, right? You're trying to make up for all of this in one at bat as opposed to just go through the process. And maybe that's where a new voice in that hitting coach role. I mean, it's funny, man. They've got a hitting coach and 6 assistants. I mean, somebody needs to figure this stuff out and figure it out sooner rather than later.
It sounds dumb, but I do believe in the contagiousness thing. If you look at last year's team, I felt like they were playing a little bit above their level towards the end of the season. And it felt like the hits, the running the bases, the excitement, all that stuff kind of got contagious and rubbed off on each other. I think it can go the other way too, where if you're swinging at bad pitches, you're all grinding the sawdust out of the bat because you're trying too hard, trying to make something happen for the team and get back on the right track. That can be contagious as well. I think that's a good point. So TJ Friedel is already back. CES is supposed to be reevaluated next week, at which point he might start a rehab stint, assuming everything is good. And Noelvi Marte is due back at the very end of June. Which of those three do you think will make the biggest impact for this team? Positive impact, I should say.
I think a healthy CES. I'm still bullish on him. I'm going to chalk up the slow start to the hand injury that he tried to probably play through and then re-aggravated it or whatever he did to it. I just think the sky's the limit for that dude. And I'm a big believer in Noelvi Marte too. And I know to your point, you're right. I mean, we don't have enough evidence at the big league level that he's going to be that kind of a hitter, but I do think he is going to be that kind of a hitter. I love his approach. I love McLean's approach. And I really do love, and again, Ellie's just going to be that guy that, like I said, you're going to have 3-week crazy stints or 2-week crazy stints of him doing stuff where you're like, why can't he do it all the time? Well, because he's a human being, and that's kind of the nature of the game. And he's going to have these streaks where he's 1 for 15 with 11 strikeouts for whatever reason. You just have to live with that. But I think those other guys are really, to me, going to be consistently successful. And you're missing, and again, we can't, I hate to point to this, but it's just a matter of fact, you're missing 3 of them at the moment. You're missing CES and Noelvi and Matt McLean, 3 guys I think who really will be consistently successful big league hitters. And you're missing, that's 3 ninths of the lineup. I mean, that's a big number.
It is. I mean, it's significant. And more significant than just missing those guys is what it means for the other guys that are pushed into bigger roles that we're all harping on and saying how much they stink. Dude, it's like they were never supposed to be in that role.
Yeah, I can't remember. Was it the day we did the podcast last week? They might have played an afternoon game. It was something along those lines where I looked at the lineup card and you've got Mike Ford batting cleanup, Espinal batting 6th. I think Luke Maley was batting 7th. I mean, it was just a horrifying
off.
Yeah, I mean, it was just it was just like, how do you win with this lineup? You can't.
Yeah, and to be clear, I didn't include Matt McLean because he's not going to be back for a while.
Right. Yeah.
Is the obvious answer to this question, I think. But I would agree with you that CES is the guy because Friedel, as much as I like him and he seems like a great complimentary piece, he's more of the table setter. He's more the guy that's going to get on base and kind of string along those things. I don't think he's the guy that changes your lineup all of a sudden because he's back. And with Marte, again, it's just so unproven. I mean, he could come up here and have that sophomore slump and struggle big time. And he's also missed half the season. With CES, I think you do hope it was the injury that was causing the slump early this season. He's already proven, as much as he did last year, that he is a legitimate feared power hitter in the middle of a lineup. That is something this team is missing. I mean, they're just hitting the ball so weakly, constantly all over the place. It would be nice to see a guy that carries a heavy stick in the middle of the lineup for a little bit. Yeah,
I mean, like I said, you're batting Jake Fraley cleanup. If this was Jake Fraley of last year, then I'm good with it. But right now, I mean, he doesn't have much pop.
Yeah, the Reds also made a public statement that they have retired the Viking helmet celebration for home runs. Skinny, your thoughts on that?
Well, you know I was anti-Viking helmet from Jump Street. I think that hokey stuff is for the birds. It's all fun and games when you're winning, but when you're losing, the fun and games just they go away. They're no longer fun and games. And maybe you could argue they need more of that. Well, problem is you're not wearing the Viking helmet because nobody hits the ball out of the ballpark at the moment. So what the hell's the point of it? You might as well retire the damn thing.
Yeah. First of all, it's about time that they did it because of the lack of success they were having while still using it this season. And also, it's nice that now that NKU has made an NCAA tournament, they've stopped the cultural appropriation of stealing the Norse celebration. I appreciate that. By the way, they're second to last in batting average at 216, tied for 18th in home runs with 52. The Yankees have 83. 31 more home runs than they are. They've played the same amount of games. The Phillies have played one more game than the Reds. They've scored 72 more runs than the Reds. I think it was time to do away with the celebration. I think
thank you. Like I said, I was anti-Viking guy from the jump. I don't need that hokey stuff. I know they got a kick out of it last year, and it was when things were going well. It was all fun and games, all fun. Just do your job, man. I'm just a big do your job guy. By the way, congratulations to your NKU Norse.
Yeah, shout out to the Norse
for beating a bunch of position players pitching in the championship game of the Horizon League.
Hey, that's pretty much all the Horizon League anyway. If you look at the scores, it's like 24-18 throughout the middle of the week in a Horizon League game. It's just terrible pitching constantly.
So a friend of my daughter's she went to school with, her brother is a pitcher at NKU, Nick McClanahan, and he pitched actually in the championship game. So I went to look at what kind of season he was having, and I looked at the staff ERA, and this is kind of the Horizon League in a nutshell. To your point. They made the NCAA tournament, and kudos to them.
This is the team that won it.
This is the team won it. Has an ERA over 7.
Yeah, it's not that rare, though. It's not that rare in the Horizon League.
It just made my eyes bug out. I went, wait, over 7?
Look, we're all a bit shocked, but they're in the NCAA tournament. That's all you can ask for. And their tickets are going for like $1,200 because everyone wants to see them play. I think that's why they're going for $1,200 at least. I saw that it's standing room only available there in Knoxville for Friday night's game.
Well, I will tell you this. You're not going to be playing against position players when they play Tennessee, at least on the mound.
Those guys don't suck.
That'll just tell you all that the fact that that's what Youngstown State had to revert to of who can pitch, guys. Jimmy, you want to pitch an inning? Sure. Go give it a roll, buddy.
Well, I mean, I'm watching Xavier last week. They have to finish a game against UConn on Wednesday or Thursday afternoon at like 1.
The rain delayed. Yeah, the rain delayed game.
Yeah, guy throws 50-something pitches in that, and then they get into the game that night against St. John's. They're battling out. They bring the same guy back who had thrown 51 pitches earlier in the day, bring him back for some more relief later in the night. It's just like none of these college teams have any depth in terms of their pitching.
It's insane, though. If you look, they've got like 16 pitchers listed, but they feel like they go through 5 a game.
Yeah, well, they also know, I think there's like 4 of those dudes that can actually pitch, and then like 11 of them that they're like, I'm not putting him in. We'll put the shortstop in instead.
Yeah, it's the 3 weekend starters is what it is.
Yeah,
and the closer. 3 weekend starters and the closer. There's your 4 legit guys.
Exactly. Let's wrap up the Red segment. One more quick off the beaten path topic. In 1968, Johnny Bench game-worn and signed Cincinnati Reds rookie jersey is headed for auction, Skinny. Its value is estimated at over $150,000. What do you think would be the most valuable piece of Cincinnati sports memorabilia that you can think of?
I can tell you what's probably the least valuable piece of anything signed by Pete Rose, because he signs everything. Doesn't he?
That's a good point.
Really. I've probably got 6 Pete Rose signed things in my closet, from books to a baseball to a bat. I mean,
there are probably like 30% of Cincinnati's population probably has something signed by Pete Rose that they didn't even want or ask for.
I think you're right. I think that's exactly. And his autograph is pretty easy to forge too. So there's probably a lot of Pete Rose forged autographs going on.
Why would you ever need to forge it?
That's a great point. I mean, that's a legit point. I don't know. That's a really good question. Anything, if there's anything out there that's tied to the original Red Stockings franchise, be it the original contract of sign, I think there is something. I think there is some of that memorabilia that's out there somewhere. I'm sure somebody owns it, but I think I've seen it auctioned before. That to me would probably be the most valuable.
Yeah, it's not really as much about the piece of memorabilia. I'm more interested in where people's minds go when you ask a question like this. Like, what's the first thing you think of that would be like the biggest either event or team in Cincinnati that you'd want something from? So the original Red Stockings, that's a really good one. I think obviously there's Big Red Machine. A lot of people think of that. The 90s team, they think of that. With the Bengals, it's a little bit more difficult. Is there a Bengals piece of memorabilia that you would think is
I would say if
valuable?
You get one of those original Paul Brown hats, like that he actually wore. That's
a good one. That's a really good one.
I'm sure it's out there. Hell, I'm sure Mike probably has it in his closet.
Yeah, that's right. It probably hasn't left the house.
Mike might wear it for all I know.
Yeah. There's some mothballs on that thing right now.
Oh, this was my father's. I'm not selling it.
Did the old man like Frisch's fudge cakes?
I think the whole family did. Because back in the day, when they used to practice at Spinney Field, it was pretty close to that Queensgate Frisch's.
Do you think they're upset about the way Frisch's is like dying off here?
They have to be. In fact, if I was Mike, I mean, he's got the money. Go buy a franchise just to keep it afloat. Go buy the Queensgate one and keep it afloat, man.
He really should, honestly. As a last piece of goodwill to the city, Mike Brown should revive Frisch's and buy it.
I agree.
I agree with that.
In its heyday, I was a huge fan of Frisch's. The last 2 times I went, not so much.
Yeah, I heard it got sold off to an outside firm. They've ran it into the ground, and now it's basically going to go bye-bye. But that's unfortunate because it was a good spot back in the day. While we're on the Bengals topic, let's talk a little bit about that. The voluntary OTAs are taking place this week. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins were both absent from team activities, which we expected. But there were 2 other notable names missing in new free agent additions, Sheldon Rankins and Trent Brown. Are you surprised Rankins and Brown didn't show up for OTAs?
Rankins, no, because I think he told Zach Taylor when he signed, from what I understand, I'm not showing up for that stuff. So I'll be shocked if he's not there for mandatory minicamp. And I think the same for Jamar. And I'm going to get to both Jamar and T here in a second. Trent Brown, I am a little bit. Is this him being pissed off that they drafted somebody? Is this him just saying, I'm a veteran, I don't need this crap? I don't think it's a great look. Again, it's voluntary. He doesn't have to be there, but I would think I'd at least try to start learning. And again, he could probably be learning the playbook on his own for all I know and diving into it on his own terms. But I still think it's not a good look that he's not here. Sheldon Rankins, I mean, I get he's a veteran who already told them up front, I'm not going to be there for this stuff, and they signed him anyway. So what the hell? If you were comfortable in doing that, you're comfortable in him not being there. But I do want to get to Jamar and T for just a second because I'm writing a column on this, Rick, and I got the vibe on this, and then I heard our friend Mo Egger's show. He played a clip from, is there a show called Speak Up that's got like Shady McCoy and couple other jamokes on it that I don't even know who they are. I think that's an ESPN deal, yeah. Is it? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the clip was this guy making a big deal that those guys aren't at OTAs, and man, you better have them line up when the season. Dude, this is the comment I'm gonna write. The old Chicken Little fable, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. The sky's not falling, man. No, this is no big deal whatsoever. It's 2 guys playing out the leverage of contracts to the best that they can. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to move the needle. But I also understand it. You're not going to come there and slip on a wet field or take a weird turn. In fact, T can't even. He's not even on the. He's not under contract.
He's not allowed. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not even under contract. So that part's you got to push that to the wayside. And then I saw the clip of this. I haven't dived into it fully, but the clip where Adam Schefter and Dan Orlovsky had an argument where Schefter brought up, well, what if it's week 10 and he's got an owie and decides he's not going to play for a few weeks? And Orlovsky's like, that's ludicrous, man. The guy's got to play to go earn his money. Yes, he's got to. And you know where this is coming from? Because he's such a bagman mouthpiece, Schefter is for agents. It's coming straight from the agent of, well, maybe put that narrative out there that, hey, if he gets hurt in week 10 or whatever, he may not play. Fine, T, don't play. And you know what? You're costing yourself. You're costing yourself.
And by the way, we've already seen this type of scenario last year with T. Higgins while he was playing hurt. I mean, like, that's not who he is. I don't see that being a problem at all.
Yeah, that's the other thing, too. This was the same guy who hurt his hamstring in the first half of the Chiefs game to the point where he had to sit on the bench and then tried to ball out in the second half. It's not in his DNA, man.
Right. Like, he likes the city, likes this franchise. He's done everything he can do to show that to this point. This is the business side of it. His agent's doing the agent thing. It's not fun for anyone, but you kind of have to respect it because the Bengals are doing the business side of things, too, with him.
Exactly, Rick.
I mean, like, everyone's playing the business side of things, and it all makes sense.
And that's these guys making it sound like this is a big deal. Oh, you got to be out there with Joe Broering. Going to mess up the timing. Dude, if they aren't in the same page by now, they've never gotten on the same page. Give me a break. They can write a book. They've got so many pages they're on together.
Yeah. And that's actually why it's a little more interesting that Trent Brown isn't here because for a veteran that's been around, it really is pretty meaningless to be at this stuff. But for a new guy, I'm not saying you need it, but it does, like, you think you want to send the right message of, like, oh, I'm here.
And this may not even be a thing by this time next year because the NFLPA is trying to push for an earlier start to training camp and doing away with the April, May, early part of June OTA stuff. They feel like you go away you do this stuff for a few weeks and you go away for a few weeks. You try to restart in camp as opposed to let's just start it earlier, do some of this OTA stuff then, ramp up slowly, and then get into normal training. I'm kind of with them on that.
That seems to make more sense and give them a more extended time if they want to, go out west and hold a training camp themselves with a couple buddies out west, whatever. It gives you
rehab and surgeries, Rick. I mean,
that's a good point too. Yeah.
I mean, that's the other part.
Yeah. Skinny, one of the other things I wanted to ask you about is with Chase and Higgins being out, again, no surprise there, but we're getting a lot of comments on Jermaine Burton via social media and even some other notebook-like write-ups I've seen commenting on his and Burrow's connection. Is Jermaine Burton receiving extra hype right now because no one else is at OTAs, or do you think he's actually showing something already?
Nobody's showing anything at OT.
Yeah, that's my point.
I mean, that's just. I mean, occasionally if you get some one-on-one battles, those are fun to watch, right? The one thing I will say is Jermaine Burton, as I mentioned during the draft, he's my favorite. I think he's the favorite upside pick for me. And just watching him out there, dude's an athlete, and I think he is going to add a big element to this offense. I think he's done all the right things, said all the right things. I think for whatever that baggage that he carried with him, whatever that was, the label of baggage. And again, he's never going to get away from slapping the woman at Tennessee. That's always going to be part of it. But whatever other red flags there were, plural, I think he's working really hard to try to dispel all of that stuff and do all the right things, say all the right things, be in all the right places. And the one thing I will say is this is a chance to start gaining some early trust of Joe Burrow. Like if you're running routes and you're dropping slants and you're dropping, passes that are dropped in the bucket, he wants to trust you. Two guys that are on this roster still who really, honestly, if you looked at them and I know this is going to be stereotypical because they're both white, but really Tanner Hudson does not look like an NFL tight end doing stuff. Trent Irwin does not look the part of an NFL wide receiver, but you know what they gained and gained very quickly? They gained the trust of Joe Burrow being in the right place at the right time and catching passes. And that goes a long, long way.
I'm glad you said that because there was this video of Burton and Burrow, and Burrow's like it was a really good video. Burrow's like showing like, you're going it like this. I want you to go like this, moving his hands, sort of showing him the actual physical motions that he wants to do on a certain route. And it was good because it just looks like two guys shooting it over the details, really getting into the nitty gritty of what they're doing. And it's like, oh, it's good to see the young guy learning from Burrow like that. But then you also, I guess my takeaway from that moment and a few other things that I've read or seen is that Burrow is almost becoming this Tom Brady-like figure where the players around him know he can make me a star if he just likes me and trusts me enough. And so they're just doing everything they can to be like, Joe's the man. Whatever he says goes. I'm going to be around him as much as possible. Like Trent Irwin said, one of the biggest things is being on the same page as Joe. If you're on the same page as Joe can do special things and the team can do special things. And I get that can be a throwaway quote,
sure,
but I also, just along the lines of what we're talking about, it does feel like there's this aspect of the players understand. It's like, just make sure that guy likes me enough to look my way because it could make my entire career.
Yeah. And I mean, look, Irv Smith was not very good, right? He just wasn't. But guess what Irv Smith very quickly lost? He lost the trust of Joe Burrow. And Joe just at that point went, I ain't looking your way, bro. And once, they started making some moves at tight end, he started looking back at the tight end again. And guess what? Tanner Hudson's making catches, making plays. And guess who started getting more playing time and caught a bunch of balls? And you look up, you go, hey, that guy had a pretty nice season in limited duty, Tanner Hudson. And so I think that's a big part of it. And that's where I think Jermaine Burton is going to work really hard and understand to work really hard to earn Joe Burrow's trust.
I did think it was kind of interesting when he was asked about like, oh, is it nice for you not having those veteran guys around so you get more opportunity? He's kind of like, no, I'd rather have them around.
Yeah.
To learn from them.
I get it. Well, that's the other thing. I mean, and you want the young guys to probably learn from them, but listen, T. Higgins, or rather, Jamar Chase will be here for minicamp. He's not going to be. He's not going to want to be fined. That is mandatory. You either have to be there or you're fined. This stuff is all voluntary. And again, he's in that weird room of, even though he's got the 5th year option already picked up for 2025, he's also still at the end of, technically, this will be the 4th year of his rookie contract. He's in that extension mode, kind of like T was at the end of last year, kind of like Jesse Bates was the year that he got all pissy and missed some stuff. And again, to your point, Rick, it's the business side of both sides, of the player doing the business side and the team doing the business side.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's switch gears here to the basketball side of things. Not a ton to talk about either college or NBA, but I just want to touch on them both briefly. The deadline for withdrawing from the NBA draft and returning to college came and went on Wednesday night. Now, this is an interesting situation for Kentucky because they're still trying to round out their roster. And one of the big names that was talked about them potentially adding was Jackson Robinson, the BYU swingman, forward wing type guy, a versatile piece that can do a lot of different things, who was in the NBA draft, but it was perceived as if he exited the NBA draft and opted to come back to college, that he would likely end up at Kentucky with his former coach at BYU, Mark Pope. As of last night, that deadline came and went, and he still didn't announce anything. So I don't think that's come out since we've started this podcast. I checked just before we went on. I don't know what to make of that situation, but it seems like Kentucky's still kind of hanging the balance a little bit here with these final roster spots.
Yeah, and they lost out on obviously Chaz Lanier, the guard from North Florida, who opted to go to Tennessee because Kentucky was one of his finalists, and that would have kind of filled the scoring. I think the hope was you're getting either him or Jackson Robinson, one of the two, to fill that kind of the main scorer role, if you will. Yeah, I mean, Jackson Robinson would be a great addition, right? There's no question about that. But everybody's worried about they don't have enough scores. I think they do. I just think it's going to be a bunch of guys in the 10 to 14 point range. And yeah, maybe you do need an end of shot clock guy. I don't know who that is at the moment. Maybe it's the Wake Forest kid who actually did pull his name out of the draft. The stretch forward, I'm drawing a complete blank on his name. Carr. Yeah, Andrew Carr. I didn't even know his name was in the NBA draft, honestly, to pull out of, but he actually pulled out of the draft. So he is definitely coming to Kentucky. I did see they had another kid that they're trying to get, a high school kid who reclassed, I believe, to 2024. But I don't think you're going to count on that to help. And the other thing is, we don't know about, what Travis Perry can be, what Trent Noah can be. I mean, maybe they're nothing. Maybe they are just Kentucky kids who it's happy to have a roster spot. I don't think they're Reed Shepherd, because to your point, and you said it before, I didn't even realize this when you said it before. I knew Reed was highly thought of. I didn't realize Reed was such a high number of stars recruit when he was recruited, certainly more than these two kids are. But you still don't know about them either. I mean, if you're adding them into the mix and then the Colin Chandler kid, you're suddenly still 11, 12 deep.
Yeah, I don't think I'm as worried about Kentucky and like what they have without Jackson Robinson as much as I just think it's kind of a weird situation. Like, he could be the focal point of your team next year, or you just might not get him at all. And it's like, you're just kind of hang out there. You may not have a replacement for him either. I mean, I think they're going to add someone else, probably one or two more guys, regardless of whether it's Jackson Robinson or not. But it is just this whole transfer portal thing, everything about this situation, the way you construct a roster. And obviously Kentucky's even more crazy this year because Mark Pope coming in, all of that stuff is just so bizarre to follow right now.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama gets a good get last night, too, because Mark Sears pulled out of the draft, and he's coming back to college. So for some of these teams that maybe thought they might be losing a guy, suddenly look up and go, hey, nice re-addition to our club. Or maybe he'd already told them anyway. Maybe they already knew. But, I mean, he made that official last night, too.
Yeah, and in the Big East, UConn got Alex Karaban back. A lot of people thought he was going with the way he was performing in NBA draft workouts and everything, shooting the ball really well. So, yeah, there's been some interesting notes coming out of there. Nothing too big from a local perspective. UK was really the only team that had much going on. But I will say on the UK side of things, Ugonna Onyenso also backed out of the draft, but he's in the transfer portal and not coming back to Kentucky. Right. It seems like every mock draft I read has my Spurs taking either Reed Shepherd or Rob Dillingham with that fourth pick. It's crazy. Almost every single one has one of the two UK guys. Yeah, I don't see either one of them slipping out of the top 10, and probably both go inside the top 7. Which is crazy because, Skinny, we kept talking about during the end of the college basketball season that we expected Reed Shepherd to slip once we got to this time. Yep. And it's been the exact opposite. He's risen from maybe a lottery guy to a clear top 5 pick, top 10 pick, no doubt. It's pretty wild to watch. And I'm anxious to see him in the NBA, but I am a little concerned about my team taking him because I am fully prepared to be incredibly pissed off at whoever the Spurs draft this year because he's going to not be good enough and Victor Wembanyama is going to continue to be wasted. And that's going to drive me crazy. So I kind of don't want it to be one of these two UK guys. Yeah, I think Rob Dillingham's going to be an NBA star. I'm not against that either. I just don't want him to come to the Spurs and fail and me to hate him because that's what I'm geared up for. By the way, we're talking about potentially 2 top 5 picks who didn't start and didn't play a ton together with the other third stud, Antonio Reeves. What a genius. What a freaking genius. Kind of does get pretty silly when you look at it that way, doesn't it? It's literally almost like he was doing this out of spite. Like, I'm going to show you guys, I'll do it my way. I swear that's what some of this feels like. I think in a lot of ways, that's exactly what was going on. And we've talked about that. It got weird at the end where it felt like Cal was constantly fighting the fan base and like some other boogeyman out there that I'm not even exactly sure who he was in a fight with, but he was constantly trying to prove himself to someone. And I didn't really understand that. The Phantom Analytics Owl. I'm not going to tell Owl his analytics are correct, even though they're staring me square in the face. I'm going to do it my way. All right, exactly. Bud, you do it your way. Skinny, what about the NBA situation here? Obviously not much excitement here in the Eastern or Western Conference Finals. What do you think about the championship game, and do you have any bets riding on it? I don't. I
I took two long shots. I took the Cavs to come out of the East, and I took Golden State to come out of the West. I thought Golden State was a sneaky surprise, big time odds pick, and it didn't work out whatsoever. I did find it interesting yesterday, the conversation of the whole length of the season again coming up, and the way the schedule was laid out last year, and the whole load management thing keeps coming up. And I do think the NBA, they tried with that whole 65 game thing that you got to play that to be eligible for postseason awards. I got to be honest with you, they got to do something about this whole load management. And I do wonder that I don't think it's coincidence, all these damn injuries in the playoffs to key guys. And the second half of that schedule was far more condensed than the first because they put that stupid ass tournament in there that nobody cared about outside of deep rooted NBA people. I know NBA people are still fawning over it, like, oh, that was a great idea. I was all for. What did it do? Can you even tell me who won that thing? I don't even remember who won the thing. Do you?
Was it no? Maybe. I feel like the Lakers were like kind of involved in that.
They were either in the final or won it, I believe.
Yeah, I know they stink, but I feel like they were.
You don't know off the top of your head.
No, I don't care either. I didn't pay attention at all.
But I do think that there is something to this injury situation where, again, they played so many games down the stretch. They played more back-to-backers at the end of the season that something's up with this. And I do also wonder if this whole load management thing, once they're asked and pressed to play more like in the playoffs, there's no load management in the playoffs. Either you're playing or you're hurt. It's one of there's no in between. That's understood. That maybe these guys can't go 4, 5, 6, 7 game stretches.
I just want, which kind of would make sense. I mean, it does seem like a lot. If you ever go to an AAU event and you see the kids play 4 or 5 games in 4 or 5 straight days, you see what it looks like by that last day. It's horrible. Dude,
as a coach on trips, if I drove to like an Indy or north of Indy as a 2-hour drive coming back home on a Sunday night from coaching an AAU tournament, I was dead. It felt like somebody hit me with a base. I can only imagine what the players felt like.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's legitimate that it is probably hard to go back to back to back to back 5, 6, 7 days like that. I guess the big issue I see is it's clearly the issue or the solution is clear that you need to shrink the season down significantly. And like, honestly, you look at college, a lot of it's kind of like, midweek game and then the weekend. And that seems to make sense. Or like even in the pros, if you just did like pile up your road trips, you play Friday, Saturday, Sunday or something like that. And that was it. That would seem to make more sense from not worried about the load management, but then it just no one's getting rid of half their inventory from a TV perspective or from a ticket sales perspective.
Right. I mean, even the 82 games and listen, it sucks that if I want to go watch a Star and take my kid to see the Star and Star's not playing on that night, that sucks. That's really, but yeah, teams aren't going to give up, if let's just say they decide to go from 82 games to 62 games, you're not giving up 10 home dates because people still bought tickets for those home dates, no matter whether they were pissed that they came. They bought tickets in April for a January 23rd game, and they were expecting to see LeBron play, and LeBron didn't. Tough luck. It sucks. Something needs to be done about that, but the NBA's not giving up those games.
No, and yeah, I just don't see any way that happens. In reality, the actual number that you need to shrink it to is probably like 40 or something, 40 something, like make it much closer to college, but that's just never going to happen. So
no,
I don't know that there's a great solution for it right now, to be quite honest with you. I think it's something that we're just going to have to kind of continue to deal with.
Yeah, and I think Boston will lose one. They'll win 4-1, and they'll lose a game, probably game 2, like they seem to have lost almost every series. And everybody be going, "Oh, Boston's are relying too much on the 3 ball." Nah, it's their time. It's their time.
I want to say you're right, but I tell you what, right now the 2 best players are Luka and Kyrie.
They are.
I don't know, and I'm a big on like whoever has the best player in the championship wins.
It's a fair point.
I feel like they have both of the best players right now. I mean, I love Jason Tatum. I love Jaylen Brown, but I don't think either one of them are playing as well as Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic right now.
And I will say this, as much as Kyrie is a kook, the dude does have a title behind him. So he knows, and again, we can all point to that was LeBron's team, but Kyrie was a huge part of that.
Kyrie's become actually underrated in the NBA because he's become such a goofball.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
People look at him as like this kind of sideshow, like kind of lost it, but he's still an elite level scorer and ball handler.
Yeah, watching the end of whatever that game was where Luka hit the 3 was honestly fascinating to watch. Because you knew that's what was going to happen. I'm just watching, I'm like, he's going to hit a 3 right here. Here it comes. Bang.
But here's what I love. Honestly, if he wins a championship, I'll go on record and say this. He will become my favorite all-time NBA player, passing up David Robinson and Tim Duncan, because he is fat as can be right now. This dude is taking no precautions or advanced performance off-season stuff like with trainers to get his body into shape. He's eating 3-course meals, smoking a cigarette, taking a big dump, maybe drinking a glass of wine, and then going out and putting up triple doubles on these dudes, and they have no recourse. They can't do anything about it.
And that goes back to him and Babe Ruth. It shows you don't need to be in tip-top shape.
Fatletes.
Yes.
I've always said it. And I mean, he is as good as we've ever seen. I mean, seriously, Skinny, you look at him on the court, he's always been a stocky guy.
Oh, yeah.
He is absolutely fat at this point.
Yeah.
And he's killing dudes.
He'd be the guy seriously, he is the Saturday morning YMCA guy that you're like, I'll take the fat guy. And the fat guy just kicks your ass. And you're like, how did that just happen? Because he's the fat guy.
Yeah. I mean, he's given NBA players everything. Like they can't stop him in any way, shape, or form. Could you imagine him in a YMCA in like 20 years?
I cannot.
All right, let's get into some Ask Skinny Anything.
But before we do, I
got a betting thing, yeah.
Yeah, I do actually. And 2 different sites brought this up. I think DraftKings put this out, and then I got an email from a guy who sends us all these odds things, I think from betonline.ag. You may already know the answer to this when I ask it. So they set lines for every NFL game. I don't know who would want to bet on some of those because you have really no idea what's going on after you don't even know what's going on week 1, but they put them all out anyway in case somebody wants to bet on them and they get a little early action. How many games do you think the Bengals are favored out of the 17?
16?
This is from 2 different sites and it's the same answer.
16?
14.
Oh, okay.
14 to 17 games. That's pretty incredible to me.
Do you know the 3 that they're not?
I don't. I'm going to say Kansas City for sure is
got to be the one that I thought of. Yeah.
I would assume Baltimore on the road is another. And I'm trying to think what other, maybe Dallas on the road.
Dallas?
Yeah.
That would make sense. Those are probably the 3. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Are they at the top?
No, the Niners, I think, were at the top, was favored in 16 of their 17 games. The Bengals and Chiefs were favored in 14.
Wow, that's a good number right there.
Yeah.
Good little betting statistic. Anything else from the betting side of things?
That was it. Nope, that was all.
All right, Ask Skinny Anything. Well, first of all, I do have to ask you about, I don't know if you saw my tweet that I tagged you in over the weekend, but I had to go to a wedding on the wife's side of the family. It's getting a 4-page. I wasn't timing it at this time because I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't sure how this was long it was going to last. But once she got into it, we realized she has 4 pages that she's going to read through up here. So a 4-page maid of honor speech. Then the father of the bride gets up there, and he's good guy, sharp guy, lawyer, like him a lot. But he went into this whole like thing where he was doing it as like, I'm addressing the people of the jury. He was like doing a little shtick up there. He
closing arguments?
Went on for over 20 minutes.
Oh my Lord.
It was insane. Would you have walked out in that situation is my question.
I definitely would have walked to the bar for another cocktail, even if I was walking across the dance floor and everybody saw me do it. I can guarantee you that.
There were a couple people that got up to get drinks during it. A lot of groans towards the end. No one actually like got up and just left and went to the bathroom. But
yeah, I don't know if I could do that. I would definitely be going to if like he started that, I drank my cocktail and another 10 minutes had passed and you were kind of in that drinking mode. There was no question. I'm like, to hell with this, dude. You've gone along. I'm going to get another cocktail.
They were all in a row too. Like they were back to back to back. So we were just sitting there for like over an hour listening to these speeches basically. But I will tell you right after that speech ended, the father of the bride, mad dash to the bathroom. And then in the men's bathroom, everyone's kind of like waiting, like kind of snickering a little bit. No one's really saying anything. And one of the old guys just goes, hung jury, in my opinion. And everyone just starts out laughing.
That's great. That's a great line. That's well done.
It was
That's
classic.
Well
all right. So who is the most electric player Skinny has ever seen? Any sport. I have small memories of Bo Jackson, Michael Jordan, a few of Barry Sanders, Deion Sanders, lots of LaDainian Tomlinson. I enjoy Ellie just about as much as any of those. So, Skinny, who is the most electric player you've ever seen?
I was fortunate in college when I was at Kentucky as a student to see in person in Lexington, back-to-back years, mind you, Herschel Walker and Bo Jackson.
Wow.
That was pretty good.
Who was more impressive between those two? I know that's like picking your favorite child, but
the answer is yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, probably Bo, but they ran a wishbone triple option offense, and Herschel Walker was an I formation, run over you back. They just both were ridiculous. I mean, they really were both just absurdly ridiculous. Trying to think from the basketball side, I've seen some electric performances, but I don't know if there's just a player that would stand out as electric to me. I mean, hell, I'll tell you this, probably one of the most electric performances was the night Trayvon Blewett lit up UC in the shootout when we were there.
Yeah. Out of the guys I've covered, I think Jordan Crawford would be the most like electrifying player because he had the athleticism and the crazy scoring ability one-on-one that I've seen. But This is a good question. I agree with this guy who asked it. I think Ellie is my answer to this in terms of any sport that I've seen. We talked about it last year on a podcast where he made those dudes look like they were in a single A knot hole the way he's taken home on them as they've got their back turned. I don't think I've ever seen another athlete, at least locally, that dominates opponents like that at the professional level.
Yeah, I mean, like even going back to the Big Red Machine guys, I mean, Joe Morgan could run the bases, but I wouldn't call him electric. Yeah. He was methodical, to be honest with you. Pete, Johnny, none of those guys were electric. I guess you could argue Chad Johnson was electric, but I don't know. To the point of this question, it didn't pop in my head. The two guys that I saw in person in college, it was like at that time, like, gee, man, this is men against boys.
Well, those are pretty damn good ones. That's tough to beat. What event at the Summer Olympics is Skinny looking forward to the most?
When it comes on, changing the channel to something else.
When is the Summer Olympics?
I think it's July. Believe it or not, I know this because I will say this: NBC, because it also owns like USA Network and some others. They have done a really good job of promoting it. They've tried to do it like individual athletes, and I think to their credit, their promotions have been really, really good for this, and they're trying to get you to know some of these people before they begin, so they try to introduce you to them. But I believe it's July 26th, and I know that one because I get hit over the head with those promotions. I don't know, the Olympics I used to long for as a kid for whatever reason, but anymore it's just,
Yeah, they kind of stink, honestly. I mean, it's nice that it's kind of on all the time in the background, but
yeah, correct. I mean, kudos to those that qualify and earn spots because it is a big deal for you, but
sure,
doesn't mean I got to watch.
It's just tough to get into.
It is. It really is. Well, and I will say this, even though it feels like we have more enemies around the world than ever before. I mean, the Cold War was a big part of rooting interest in the Olympics through the 70s and into the early 80s. I mean, the U.S. Soviet hockey game in 1980 was probably the epitome of that. It was totally good versus evil. Right now, it's like everybody's bad. Everybody hates everybody, and there's no kumbaya to this. It's just
hot take. The Olympics were more fun when racism was alive and well in our country. When you could just root against each other because of your race, it was fun.
No, we were rooting against Russia and Czechoslovakia, and there was an East Germany and a West Germany. I mean, that's who we were all rooting against.
For sure, the bad guys, which honestly, that would make it a little bit more fun if we still had some of those. Unfortunately, as you pointed out, we're all just the bad guys at this point.
Yeah, correct.
What is Skinny's favorite mascot?
I'm going to go, and it really isn't a mascot, but he kind of is. Dude, seeing Mike the Tiger at LSU when I cover UK games, it's pretty damn cool. It's like, that dude, it's Mike the freaking Tiger, man. Him and Uga, I love.
Uga, yeah.
The one that scares me is the people that run with Ralphie the Buffalo, and then the big Texas Longhorn scares me too.
Yeah, that steer that they have.
And I guess it's not a mascot, I guess, but the Boomer Sooner schooner I like. I think that's always pretty cool.
What, the big covered wagon thing? Yeah. That's turned over before, right?
It has turned over.
They've had an incident with that.
That is correct. That is correct.
So you like any mascot that could cause chaos, basically. You like live. You like live animals.
The St. Joe's Hawk bothers me. They got to flap the whole damn. That's the dumbest thing I've ever. That
actually is kind of funny, though.
It's kind of funny, but it's kind of stupid too.
It's stupid, but
I'm sorry, Xavier fans, and maybe you'll even agree with me on this. The blue blob literally stinks. Stinks.
So, well, the blue blob definitely stinks, but you know who stinks way worse than that is the damn hawk from St. Joe's.
Oh, really?
When my first year covering Xavier, Brian Snow was still running the site, so I was on the floor taking pictures for him. So I actually sat on the baseline. And one year I was like in the corner, pushed all the way up against their bench. And so right behind me, the whole game, I've got feathers falling down on my head and into my camera because this asshole's swinging his arms, doing his flapping thing. And I tell you what, the BO coming from that suit
really,
which makes sense. I mean, they're in
a
hot gym with a giant suit on and they're flapping the whole game. It makes sense that they'd work up a sweat, but I guess you can't clean the thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Nah, that's the thing. It's like, can they clean the blue blob suit once every 10 years? Is it possible?
Can we just get rid of that thing or maybe like get a new one? That does look pretty bad at this point. I can't imagine how it smells inside of it.
I do like D'Artagnan. I think D'Artagnan's pretty cool.
D'Artagnan's a great mascot. Yeah. What is Skinny? Oh, no. Favorite pizza chain. What is your favorite pizza chain?
Yeah. Believe it or not, and we used to have one up by us, and they're around like towards the loop. Hometown Pizza. You remember Hometown Pizza?
Yeah, I think there was one in Latonia for a
bit
there, right by Mike and Field.
There was one out here in Burlington. I loved Hometown Pizza.
Really? Was that a local deal or was that a national deal?
No, it feels like it's more. I used to go to them so when I was covering UK, I was a regular on one of the Lexington stations, like for pregame stuff. And then like a once a week guest to talk about UK, and I'd come in for an hour and the guy would pay me in gift cards to either Deshays or Hometown Pizza or Cheddar's, which was new at the time. It was great. I piled a bunch of those up. So
yeah, Cheddar's gift cards would be solid.
Yeah.
A long way back then.
Cash is good, but he would give me like $150 each week in gift cards. I mean, literally we would take friends to Deshays up in we're up in Montgomery, because I'd pile up about $500 worth of Deshays gift card. Like, we got to use these at some point. Let's go.
Well, that's the nice thing about getting gift cards, especially when you're talking about something like that, where it's like you're not doing a lot of work. So the actual value, they're going to give you way more value in a gift card than they are in cash. So yeah, the gift card is the way to go in those situations. Like I've done things like that occasionally where they'll give you like $100 gift card for coming by for a 10-minute segment, or whatever. Or it's like, you're never going to get paid for something like that. So yeah, I'm kind of with you on that, on the gift card thing. I
like Bourbon House pizza, but nobody in my family liked the thicker style. So I kind of stopped going there.
That's a stuffed pizza, right?
Yeah. It's the deep dish.
Like Chicago.
Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, out of the chains, I don't like Domino's much. Believe it or not, you know what I do like and we never get? I honestly like Pizza Hut.
Really?
I do.
I like the Big New Yorker from there.
Okay. Yeah.
That's solid. You know who I think is just criminally underrated, and I know it's kind of like a regional thing, started in Columbus, is Donato's. I think Donato's is off the charts good, and we treat La Rosa's like it's this incredible local thing. I know Donato's isn't specifically Cincinnati. It's just like Ohio and Columbus based, but Donato's is awesome. I love Donato's.
La Rosa's is about a once every 2 week for us. And it's funny. I get a hoagie and my wife gets a calzone. So we rarely get the pizza anymore.
But which is good though. I mean, La Rosa's food is good. I do like La Rosa. I'm not crushing La Rosa's at all, but it's crazy how much we talk about La Rosa's in this area, and Donato's really gets no love. And I mean, I think Donato's is pretty damn good.
It's okay. I don't like the crust. I don't like the crust.
There really is no crust. It's just
correct.
thin.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Okay, I've got another thing for you. This is right up your and my alley. This came from, bear with me because it's a video. It came from the Big East baseball tournament. This is John Fanta and Mike Schmaltz on the call. You'll see.
I love Mike Schmaltz.
Well, yeah, Mike Schmaltz, great guy. And Paul Fritchner does my Xavier podcast with me.
Earlier today to Skyline Chili. And that is illustrated why it's not the greatest car food, okay? There's spaghetti there. You've got the conies. And there's Paul Fritchner. That's one guy who can actually pull it off in the car. Paul, and you may have discussed this in game one, as a technique, he's got a towel for car food in his car.
All right, so John Thompson had a towel that he used during basketball
It's not that large of a towel, but it's a towel that he keeps the condiments, the things that may drip during the day, off of his clothing.
A towel.
And it looks like a piece of modern art. So there's a little bit of barbecue color up here. There's some mustard. There's a little ketchup on it. Maybe some tzatziki sauce. I don't know what Paul gets into during the day. But a lot of it's on that towel.
Okay, so someone wanted to get your thoughts on what is Skinny's take on the condiment towel, the fast food towel in the car. Paul, I asked Paul about this at length on a Xavier podcast, and he said it stays underneath of his seat. He goes through a drive-through, eats at the drive-through pretty much every day, which the guy's a stick figure. I don't know how he keeps that.
I was just saying, yeah.
But he goes through a drive-through every day pretty much. He pulls out the towel, kind of puts it over himself, and lets the slop and fall out because he's a messy eater, just lets it fall in the towel. And he says once a month or so he washes it and puts it back underneath.
Once a month? Paul, son.
Well, I was worried that it was never washed. I was worried it was going to go years.
I do got the idea itself is genius because I don't care what. Listen, we've all done it, right? You get the Taco Bell crunchy tacos. You're dying to eat. You're driving, and you just have to eat it, and it goes everywhere, right? It just you try to put the little the wrapper that it comes in on your leg to see if it even when it does, it goes here and then lands over to here, and it's just a complete. So Paul's idea is absolutely genius. Other than the fact that it's no more than a week, Paul. No, maybe you don't. Does he like to do laundry? Does he not? Or does he not like to do laundry? Is my question.
Well, I don't know. I didn't get too deep into that. I honestly was okay with the once a month because I'm thinking how often are you actually getting it messy? I think Schmaltz might have been going. I'll tell you what.
I don't know, man.
The more I talked to Paul about this, the more I was on board with his decision than I was making fun of him for it.
So we have a Burger King by us, and once every 3 or 4 months, I'll get a hankering on the way home for a Whopper, right? I haven't eaten all day. And it's like, I'm just going to go get a Whopper. Dude, it never makes it home. And then half of it's all over my lap. It's just, you can't, there's no way you can eat fast food in the car without. So his idea is absolutely genius.
Yeah. And like, you mentioned the Taco Bell. The thing that'll get me is every time, no matter how perfectly I have it laid out, then I open the hot sauce and spray it out the side all over the front of my chest.
Yeah, me too.
How the hell did that happen?
Correct. And again, the first time you bite into it, as much as you think you're going to get every part of that bite in your mouth, there goes lettuce and a piece of meat and some of the drippings from the sauce. It is what it is. So I love Paul's idea. It's absolutely, Paul, again, I'm going to look in the camera. Please wash it once a week. Please.
So I asked, I was like, what he's engaged in now. I was like,
has mold ever grown on it? Do you know?
No, I don't think so. And that's what I was worried the way Schmaltz was talking, like this thing's been going on for years and never washed. It's just got like stuff all over it. And Paul's like, no, wash it once a month and put it back under there. I think that feels reasonable. I asked him what his fiance thinks about it. And he said she's on board because she knows he's a sloppy eater and she'd rather him do that than get it all over himself. So,
okay. Well,
I don't think it's a terrible move personally.
I don't either. I think it's absolutely genius. It just for the sake of hygiene, at least once a week, bro.
Wash that thing a little more frequently.
I mean, here's the thing. You can have more than one towel in the rotation. Like maybe there's 3 or 4 of them that this week it's this towel. I'll put that one in again, if you want to put it in the hamper and wash it once a month, that's fine to me. That's okay.
I think you're onto something with actually maybe adding a towel or 2 in the rotation. Maybe it doesn't have to be one towel all the time.
We all have 20 extra towels in the house. We all do.
Yes,
so, I mean,
Yeah, maybe just cut one of those big bath towels in half. Now you get half, you only need half. Yeah. We'll wrap it up with this. What percentage of get ready? What percentage of journalists put out stories they know are probably false or are terrible takes with no supporting evidence just to get people to angrily engage on social media? I can think of 2 prominent ones who do it all the time. No, not you or Rick. One covers the Reds and one covers the Bengals.
I can tell you those that I don't think that happens. I don't think that's an edict from anybody. And if it is, it just, I mean, once you become clickbaity for clickbait's sake, you get away with that once or twice. You're not getting away with that 3, 4, or 5 times. People are just going to tune you out. They just are.
Especially locally. I mean, nationally, there's no doubt that there's some element of that's required. Like,
and listen,
national outlets that require it.
I come at this as a personal friend of Kelsey Conway's, and I know she takes a lot of crap. Listen, the last couple stories she's done, she talked to Trey Hendrickson's agent. He's the one who told her he was going to retire. And then Trey got all huffy and came back and called her and said, well, no, I'm probably not going to do that. And so what's she supposed to do? She took the agent's word for it. Trey back. It's worth the story to put out. She talked to T. Higgins' agent. I mean, she's doing her job. You may not like the reporting because of what those agents are saying. And you could argue that maybe she was David Mulugeta's mouthpiece for the T. Higgins story, and you could argue that point. But I also know she went to the Bengals for comment, and they didn't want to talk. So it's on you.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I think fans miss a lot. One, people getting mad at a journalist doesn't mean the journalist isn't doing their job. Right. Their job is not to only say things that the fans are going to like. So that's part of it. Now, I do think some journalists or media people take that too far and intentionally try to antagonize fan base of the stuff. But I definitely don't get that vibe from anyone that's covering the Bengals currently. In terms of her talking to an agent and that being, challenged, I guess, later on by Hendrickson himself, I think that's a situation where that happens all the time. And you want journalists to do that type of thing because that's how you actually find out about what's going on. Now, they may deny it still, but then you get the actual story afterwards. And the only thing we can do as journalists is say, hey, here's what I'm hearing. I have pretty good sources that are telling me this. What would you say about that? And if someone goes, no comment, or we're not going to help you, then you go try to confirm it with another person or two, get it from another source or two, and then you pretty much put out what you have. That's the way it should be done. And if they want to cry about that later, you gave them their opportunity to put what they thought about it on the record. That's the right way to do things.
Yes. I mean, Trey and his camp painted himself into that corner. And as I told you at the time, I wrote the column the next day of he's made this trade demand. So what? You got no leverage, my man. But it was made. I mean, that was I'm going to retire or trade me. Okay, well, they're not going to trade you, and then you're not going to retire. And now who looks like it's like Kelsey doesn't look like a fool. Trey Hendrickson looks like a fool, in my opinion. And again, in this T stuff, this is the way that it's actually playing itself out. I mean, it literally is playing itself out the way it's always going to have played itself out.
So do you think this guy was going after Kelsey? Because I'll admit, obviously Gordon Whitmire's
well,
the guy
I know
on
she
the
takes
red
a lot
side.
of crap. I know she takes a lot of crap on Twitter. I know it.
Yeah. I'm wondering, because when he said Bengals, I did not know who he was referring to. I mean, Reds is obviously Gordon, and that's somewhat fair, I think. I do think he goes a little too far trying to piss off the Reds fan base because he thinks it's like part of his deal or his shtick now, whatever. He takes journalism really seriously, I guess. But with the Bengals side of things, I don't see any of the Bengals writers that seem like they're trying to go out of their way. If anything, I feel like the Bengals writers are like pretty supportive of the Bengals and pretty great partners, honestly. I mean, like I would say there's not a lot of pushback against the Bengals typically.
And I'll be honest with you, some of that is to the credit of the staff. And again, I've written some critical things, and I've actually had a team executive say, he goes, I don't always agree with you, but I do appreciate what you write. But they're closed-lipped about it. Like, I appreciate him reaching out to me to tell me that, because I know that they're looking at it. I know I pissed off a couple of people in their sales department with stuff I wrote about I'm not being a very good partner at Local 12 when we were partners with them. And I'm like, well, that's not my job. I'm sorry. That's just not my job. You can disagree with it. But a lot of times you're not getting a response from them. And okay, that's fine. That's the way they want it. If you want to write something, go ahead and write your thing, put it out there. Unless it's completely egregious, they're not going to say a word about it. And that's just the way they want it. And that's fine.
And that's fine. Yeah.
You're not getting their side of it a lot of times either.
Right. But I think that's fair in that case. As the journalist, that's what your job is. I mean, if they're not going to comment, you have to put out what you believe to be the truth to the best of your ability. And I think that from what I see on the Bengals side of the coverage, and I follow pretty much everyone that covers the team, I don't get the sense that anyone's going out of their way to be like clickbaity or to try to drive up engagement a whole lot. I mean, like I would say the person who does that probably the most is the most positive about the team. It's James Rapine. Because he's the guy that does the most social media stuff, the most video stuff on YouTube, and has like tried to build that platform. And he's done a fantastic job. I really enjoy what he does. But I think he's as positive as you'll find in terms of someone who covers the team. He's not very negative at all. So I definitely don't think he's like trying to get enraged clickbait stuff out there to drive up his engagement. So in terms of what percentage of journalists are doing this, I mean, there's definitely some that do that nationally or in other places, but I don't see a lot locally that are really a problem.
Yeah, I don't either. But I get it. I mean, fans are going to react the way they want to react, and that's fine. Yeah,
and there is some element of some fans just don't want anything negative said about their team ever, or want anything that they feel puts their team in a bad spot. Basically, they want the journalist to be like part of the coaching staff essentially and help them out, and that's not realistic.
I'd rather be that than be a fanboy who put out last year that T. Higgins' contract was about to sign his extension. Still waiting on that, my man.
How'd that work out? All right, that's all we got.
All right, very good. We'll be back next week with another podcast for Rick Broering. I'm Richard Skinner. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition presented by Blake the Attorney Maislin.
Sure, you could stop watching now, but let's be honest, you want to see more. So click some of those links, or better yet, go ahead and tap subscribe. That way you'll catch more content from Local 12.